Hi, I'm Sabrina. I'm the CEO of Palo Alto Software, makers of LivePlan, and I am here with Noah.
I'm COO here at LivePlan.
We're here to do a little Reddit questions, getting some answers to our customers. Did this with Peter the last time, so I'm excited to do that with Noah. Noah, as we go through these, you're going to have to forgive me, but some of these Reddit usernames are interesting and sometimes a mouthful. So we'll see how both of us do with that.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I can't promise to be as funny as Peter, but we'll see what happens.
So our first question is from Some Alter Ego in the small business subreddit. And the subject line for this question is, my biggest customer for almost 15 years was gone last Friday. 3 kids, nervous, just need to vent. And I'll expand a little bit on the question. And I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts, Noah, and then we can jump in on some of the thoughts of other Reddit users. So the full question, I started my maintenance business almost 15 years ago. One customer has been driving steady money, and they were my first big customer. Nothing crazy as far as profits, but over $200,000 a year in revenue. However, my operating costs are high. The customer recently made some changes and hired a new general manager, and he decided to keep maintenance in-house rather than using us as a subcontractor. I know things could be worse, and trust me, I will learn from this, but I'm still anxious. Anybody else ever deal with anything like this? I feel so many different emotions.
Whew, yeah, it's a tough spot, definitely. And looking at the answers that are already here in this thread, I have to say I am on the side of Shmeep Sheep and Wami. Both of those Reddit users talk about why you shouldn't have a single customer that is the majority of your business's revenue. Wami says that no client should be more than 20 to 30% of your overall revenue. I definitely strongly agree with that. When you're wholly reliant on a single customer, that's a problem. And if anything, you might want to, in your business, set a rule that you never want a single customer to be more than a certain percentage of your revenue, and figure out a way to bring on other customers that are either similar or just diversify your revenue streams. Because when you're at the mercy of one customer, you're really walking a tightrope that at any point could just break, which is what unfortunately happened to Some Alter Ego.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I also want to be, cognizant that sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we didn't plan. It's not, it sounds like Some Alter Ego didn't plan to be in this position. And so I just want to, point out that you can find yourself in this situation. You can find yourself in the place where you have this one customer, they're bringing in 80% of your revenue, and, you don't necessarily want to not take that revenue. But I do think that's where Noah and some of these other users in Reddit are right, in that if you find yourself in that situation, don't get to where Some Alter Ego got, and now that customer is gone. If you have that 80% of your revenue or more than 50% of your revenue is from one customer, as soon as you really understand that, that's when you want to start doing things and planning and figuring out. Yaman25 actually has some good suggestions to, Some Alter Ego, saying right now is the time to be cold calling anyone who's similar to this customer, and just get out there and find other potential customers that look like this one customer. And hopefully you can sign 3 or 4 of these people up and not be in that position again.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and is really just focus on diversity. And actually, coincidentally, and we can put a link in the notes or the comments. There's a post from Jason Fried from Basecamp this week, all about this exact issue, about figuring out how to diversify and making sure that you cap your largest customer in some way so that you're even forced to diversify. And that was super good advice. and just to try and keep an eye on it, because you're right, it's super tempting. It's easy to fall into this spot where things seem like they're going great, you're getting paid.
Well, and who wants to say no to revenue, right?
Yeah,
Like that's a
exactly.
really hard place to be.
Yeah, we've
Well,
been there exactly, where you're
yeah.
like, someone wants to pay you and all you want to say is yes.
Exactly. Well, let's go on to the next question. I think, Noah, that's all you.
Okay, awesome. So the question here is from Altruistic Willow 474. And this is in the small business subreddit. The subject is 100K in overdue invoices. What can we do?
Oof.
Yeah, rough.
That's a hard place to be.
Yeah, so the details are my husband owns a small exterior cleaning business. People often neglect to pay after services are completed. We have unpaid invoices from the beginning of this year. It's not even that people pay late anymore, it's that they flat out do not pay. For residential bills, a bill of $150 to $500 does not seem worth the hassle of trying to send it to collections. But in total, when so many people refuse to pay after service, it adds up to be a lot. Any advice?
Oh boy. I'm going to jump in right away and say that in this particular situation, and if anyone finds themselves in a situation like this, there's more going on here. If you have these many people who are simply not paying, something else is happening, and you should step back and examine. Are you training your customers not to pay? Are you allowing them to get services and then have overdue bills, and then you're still going back and you're giving them more services? Do you have the wrong customers? Are you charging incorrectly, or are you giving bad service? I mean, this is a pattern that is concerning and leads me to believe that there's some other problems going on.
Yeah, I think, and there's, this is the sentiment of the responses. But Whirling Dervish here talks about collecting payment before leaving the property, and I couldn't agree more. And just personally experiencing people that have come to our house to do service, a lot of these people have iPads or their phone. They have a payment method right there. And
or at least a way to collect
a way to collect payment.
Yeah,
And part of closing out the service is doing a walkthrough of the work that you've done, and then collecting payment and emailing the receipt and just doing it digitally on site immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think about this other Reddit user, Content Blocked, is saying you need to put credit cards on file to confirm bookings? I mean, that's another way around it so that you don't have to maybe rely on a customer being able to stop what they're doing, give you a credit card on site before they leave, right? We've all been in the situation, many of us working virtually from home, somebody's at your house doing something, HVAC service, lawn service, and I can't always step away, right? So like, while I agree with you, there's so much great technology these days. Don't send people out to perform services with a clipboard and no technology, right? Like
Absolutely.
we're in a different world. But I like what Content Blocked is saying, and I totally agree. Put those credit cards on file. Also, I know $150 to $500 doesn't seem worth the hassle of sending to collections. It's not. It probably isn't. But again, it's an indication that you're doing other things incorrectly. So beyond the credit card, you could even give discounts if people prepay, right? So if I prepay my service before you even get there, maybe I get 10% off. But this is a classic position of not managing accounts receivable and not having strategies in place to quickly collect money.
Yeah, and just to try and, I think moving forward, definitely changing process makes total sense. But looking back to see if you can collect some of this 100K that's out there, because that's a lot of money. Even sending emails or letters, which is relatively small investment to these customers, even threatening to go to collections, at least starting to put that out there that this money is due, and drawing a line on that.
And do not give more service to anybody who owes you money, right? Like absolutely not. If they owe you money, they cannot get more service until they pay you. So having some strict guidelines that you can follow, because I think sometimes people just feel like mean people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think you need to like give yourself permission to do business and to request payment, but not all of us feel good about asking for money. And so put the rules in place, put the guardrails there so that you're not confronted with this after the fact.
Exactly.
All right, let's jump into the next question. Our next question is from Nickly Boudin in the Entrepreneur subreddit. And I probably did not pronounce that right, but we're just going to go with
it's the Reddit usernames sometimes can be a little challenging.
Yeah. So the question, the subject line is, as an entrepreneur, how do you brand your personal business? So I'm curious. Let's read a little bit more about this question. For the past 4 years, I've been freelancing in customer support services. After hitting some luck, I was able to invest and hire 4 employees. Now my team has grown to 12 people and the business is doing well. The problem is I've been operating everything under my name and I don't have any formal brand identity. As I aim to scale further and attract larger clients, I'm starting to realize how important it is to have a strong, recognizable brand. Right now, there's no official company name, no logo, no consistent message that represents my business. Word of mouth has worked up until now, but I know that won't be enough for future growth. I'm wondering what steps I should take to create a proper brand. Should I hire a branding agency to get things going, or is this something I can handle myself in the beginning? What do you think, Noah?
Awesome question. I would say, is not a cut and dry answer here because it depends, which is probably not the answer that anyone likes to ever hear. But how much money do you have to spend on this? How much money do you want to spend on this? How much time do you want to save versus do it yourself? And how comfortable do you feel in this area?
And can I ask, Noah, when you say how comfortable do you feel in this area, just for people to really understand what you mean, like marketing, branding in particular,
branding, like, do you feel comfortable hopping on Canva or some other online design service and banging out a logo and doing that kind of work, or is that just not your area of expertise? Do you understand like how to pick colors for your overall brand? Is that something that you enjoy doing? And so if you're not answering yes to those questions, you probably want to find someone to work with. But it could be an individual contractor. It could be someone you find on a service like Fiverr. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full-blown agency. But really, this is a time and money question. If you're short on time and have the money, hire somebody.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So interestingly, Leviathan Axe Shop, a user on Reddit, gives some really good advice that I liked. Like even before figuring out, am I going to hire an agency, a consultant? Can I do a little bit myself? This user says, start by defining your core values and unique selling points, which will guide your branding decision. And this one I think is particularly good advice for this person because clearly there's some core values that this entrepreneur has brought to the table and has allowed them to grow their business. That personal brand that they have brought, I mean, that feels like what I'm reading here.
Yeah.
Like that personal brand has gotten to them from themselves to 12 employees. That's pretty big and big growth. And so I like this advice of define your core values and unique selling points and use that as a starting point before you jump in and decide, like, am I going to do it myself on Canva?
Right.
Am I going to use Fiverr? Do I need an agency? Having something that really brings this entrepreneur's personal brand, I think, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And actually, Strange Departure 853 echoes this, and they're spot on. And they say before deciding to go for an agency, there's some homework you can do to help properly identify your customer persona. And what they mean there is to write down what your ideal customer looks like. And I don't mean like physical appearance of what they look like, but like, what kind of customer are they? Are they, how much, what's their budget? What kind of problems are they trying to solve? What industries are they in? Basically, if you could identify your ideal customer and then go and find 10, 20, 30 more of them, that's going to really help the whole branding effort to define what the brand should look like to appeal to that ideal customer profile. And that's really what a persona is. your ideal customer profile. Sometimes you hear people say ICP, but really it's just like, who is your customer? Or maybe you have a couple different customer profiles, and how would you then go find more of them? And that's going to really dictate like what your brand is going to be and what it should look like, and what kind of message it should communicate. So doing that homework at a time is great advice.
And I really like what Section 37 says, another user in Reddit. Just a counterpoint, this user says that you can use your name, right? You can have a brand that is your name. We've seen that in a lot of businesses,
Absolutely.
particularly businesses that have been around a really long time. Maybe part of the word of mouth is tied to this entrepreneur, right? It's like part of why this person has gone from I am the only one who does this work to 12 employees is their personal brand. It sounds like it, and that's okay. Like, embrace that. And like, to Noah's point, why and what about that personal brand is appealing to your ideal customer?
Totally. So I think that's great advice. And yeah, why don't we move on to our last question here, from designer number 2771. I think that's what we're going for. This is in the Grow My Business subreddit. And subject is struggling with cash flow despite high sales. What am I missing?
Oh boy.
A lot of oh boys in this this whole session here.
Because I feel like, I say, oh boy, I shouldn't. What I should say is, this is something we hear all the time, right? And it's unfortunate because you can fix it. If you have high sales, you can fix your cash flow problems, but you can't fix them if you don't understand the drivers and the correlation. And too many people correlate high sales directly to cash, and that is not what it is. High sales will correlate to high revenue, which could correlate to nice big profits, but profit and cash are not the same. And that's what we have going on. Why don't you read the expanded question?
Yeah, I'll give you the full question here. Despite steady sales growth, I'm constantly dealing with cash flow issues. It seems that there's always more going out than coming in, even when revenue numbers look good. I've tightened up payment terms and chased down overdue invoices, but it still feels like a constant struggle to keep things balanced. What have others done to get out of this cycle and stabilize cash flow?
Whew, yeah, that's a really good one. And you know what? Number one, you are not alone. This happens to so many, many businesses. And I'm going to throw out a statistic. 60% of the small businesses that fail in the United States were actually profitable when they failed. So in exactly this position. And why? Why is cash such a huge issue? And how do you really deal with it and account for it?
Yeah, and especially if you're a product business, we don't know what this particular business is, whether they're selling products or services, but especially if you're a product business where you've got to buy your raw materials or buy your products before you sell them, and then wait, and you've got to pay your suppliers before your customers pay you. That's just, as you grow, fast growth especially is going to cause a cash crunch because of that delay of when you're buying your raw materials or buying your products and when you eventually get paid by your customers. There's a massive delay built in there. And so, I always like to reference the story of Nike in this case. And if you read Shoe Dog, which is the growth story of Nike, it's amazing how many times
they basically almost fold because they don't have cash.
Yeah, they almost went bankrupt. Not just once, not just twice, but many times as they grew. And this is because of their just soaring popularity, and they were having to place these massive shoe orders.
But they weren't going to get paid for 90 or 120 days.
Yeah, exactly. And so constantly going back to the bank, begging for bigger lines of credit. And that's obviously, a more extreme situation than, most small businesses face. But this is a common situation. So
I'm going to jump in here because there's a few responses here. And one of them I love. And the others I feel like are a little bit red flags. The response I love is from Mahi Singh 0077. This user says, try creating a detailed cash flow forecast to track exactly when money is coming in and going out. If your cash inflow consistently lags behind your outflow, it could be causing the cash crunch. What I like about this is that the reality is you cannot really understand the levers you should be pushing until you create that cash flow forecast, that full financial forecast with cash flow, because then you can put in your assumptions and then you can put in, well, what happens if half of my sales are no longer on credit? Instead, maybe I discount them, but I collect the money on front. Does that help? Because you saw in this question that the person even says they've tightened up payment terms and chased down overdue invoices, and it's still not enough.
Right.
And so what we need to do to help this business is understand the assumptions, right? Is it AR? Is it AP? Is it inventory? What are the drivers to cash that are really driving that cash flow crunch?
Right.
And then you have strategies that you can fix them. A couple other users say some things that I would say just be really careful because you don't know. Flow Unable says, look at your historical trends and see what variable expenses are directly correlated to the increased sales, and you can rectify that to lower the expense ratio. Flow Unable is giving you a revenue and profit and expense answer that does not solve cash. Right. And that is really, really important. Commercial slip 3903. I also caution, just be really careful because this user says, raise your prices. Your sales, you have sales, but not enough profit left over. Again, confusing profit and cash. Right. And so just heads up, do not confuse cash and profits and understand your cash flow drivers. Then you can decide what it is that you want to do, right? Maybe there is a margin problem, which what might mean your cost of goods are too high or your prices are too low, maybe. But until you actually lay everything out in a full financial forecast with that cash flow forecast, I don't think we can actually know why the cash crunch is happening.
Yep. Yeah, couldn't agree more. You need to do a little digging here, understand where the cash crunch is actually coming from. And, if it's from your suppliers needing faster payment, then maybe you can negotiate terms there. Or maybe you can explore a line of credit or something like that to help balance things out because you're always going to have some delay as you grow. And until you stabilize, having that leeway of a line of credit could be really helpful.
Yeah, and get that line of credit before you get into really bad cash crunch problems, right? I mean, and even just think about it. Think about the shoe dog situation, right? Part of what they were learning at Nike is that balance between how much do we order ahead of time, what happens when we sell out, we don't have anything to sell, like finding those balances for your business, it's really hard if it's all in your head. You got to put it down. You got to do a financial forecast, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, great advice. Well, that's it for this episode. Like, subscribe, do all the things. We love that. If you want some more advice on, forecasting cash flow, just learning about cash flow in general, the difference between cash and profits, we've got a bunch of stuff on our LivePlan blog. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, come to liveplan.com and definitely if you have any comments, if you, beyond liking and subscribing, we always want to hear from all of you guys. And please know the difference between cash and profits. Yeah, that's
absolutely
the takeaway for this whole Reddit question session. But yeah, thanks, Noah. Thanks for joining me. And you'll hopefully see me, Noah, Peter, some of our other employees jump in and do some of these Reddit questions, but really enjoy answering these questions and feeling like we get to play in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, this is great. Not as painful as I thought.